alcoholic homes, and I know that they did the best they could raising me because they had very little tools. A few weeks ago, I came to an AA speaker meeting here at the Al-Anon Club, and the speaker mentioned that the analogy that alcoholics being in a room, and that there's like 4 types of alcoholics, and what was the difference between the alcoholics and their corners. And he mentioned the corner was like the fun dancing alcoholic, the crying corner, the fighting corner, and he says the ones that end up naked, right? And in my family, we have all of them. Like every single corner, we have all of them in my family. And I think like the fear, the reason why I didn't drink and I did not become an alcoholic, it was because I was so afraid I was going to end up in the crying corner. I think I would have been okay dealing with the other ones, but the crying corner is like, oh, they end up sharing way too much dirty laundry, and I don't appreciate that. Growing up in an alcoholic home was very interesting at times. You know, it was fun and exciting, but it also can be very scary. And one of my coping mechanisms growing up in that environment, it was to forget things and to block things out. So that's something that I continue to struggle with. And I am grateful I married the guy I married because he remembers everything. So growing up, there you also learn different skills. And for example, one of my jobs in my home was that every time my dad would come home drunk, my mom will wake me up because sometimes he could get violent and he will tend to end up fighting with her. And I remember she would wake me up and she would say, hey, can you help me put your dad to sleep? And my job was like to make sure I didn't say anything that upset him, that I tried to make him happy, and then I would try to convince him, let's just get in bed, let's just go take a nap, and and then when I would get him in bed and he would sleep, I would get his wallet out and make sure I would take enough money so he was still some money left, but enough for us to buy groceries. And I think about it, and I think about those nights, and something that I still miss is like the smell of cigarettes. I love the smell of cigarettes because he always smelled like cigarettes. And sometimes when you're so drunk, so like you sweat alcohol. And I remember like that it smells so good to me, like that smell, which is weird, but I don't know. I just thinking it was like my cuddle time with my dad kind of thing. And so when I was 12, my parents separated, and when I was 15 years old, my mom got remarried, which it was awesome. He married a wonderful guy, and they decided to move to the United States. And when I moved here, I was in 9th grade, and I didn't know any English. And to be honest, I hated high school. I hate all of those movies about high school and be the best thing in your life, and you learn so much in high school to grow. And I'm like, I freaking hated everything about it. And but I think like it was a good thing. I'm grateful to be here. I love this country and the opportunities it have given me. And the thing is like some of the lessons that I learned from growing up is like, you don't tell anybody what happens in your home. You don't go share what's going on at home, and you really never ask for help because people doesn't really want to help you because you're a mess. You don't trust anyone, and most people let you down, so it's like, don't even try. And I remember my mom was always like, you need to respect others and you need to be good, but sometimes you didn't feel respected in your own home. And I remember also that she would say things like, if you're going to do something, you better do it right. So that's part of like my perfectionist on me, which I'm really working on. And I will always try to be prepared. Another thing is like, you always have money hidden places, and you make sure your husband doesn't know anything about it, and so hopefully you hide it somewhere like that you remember. because sometimes I'll forget. And the other thing is actually always like, you always look presentable, you always look decent, you always have to look good. And, when you go to Hispanic people, like Hispanic countries and stuff like that, they live in poor homes, but they try their best to look good. And I was just like, seriously? Like, you should be focused on something else, but that's not my business. And the other thing is like, you don't give up on family. No matter how your family is, you just don't give up on them. And so my childhood was hard, but it was happy too. Like, my dad was fun. Like, well, in the beginning, when he would start drinking, in the beginning, he was fun. Like, some of the things I loved about him is like, he loved music, he loved dancing. So we would dance like all the beginning of the party, and by then he was just too out to be able to continue. But I love that part, and I try not to focus in my childhood because I learned in Alanon, coming to Alanon, that as a child I was a victim, and I didn't know, I had no way out, kind of thing. But as an adult, I was a volunteer, and I just didn't know it. I didn't know it, and Al-Anon has given me the tools to know when I am becoming a volunteer and in the disease of alcoholism. So I like to focus more as an adult, and I think it's easier to make fun of myself than that child. And I know if that's like part of like the mom on me that always tries to protect, the children. After graduating from the terrible place of high school, I got a full-time job. I started going to college, and every weekend I would go out dancing. I'd never drink. I was so paranoid going to the clubs that if I started getting thirsty, I would just go out to my car, get a drink, and come back. That's how crazy paranoid I was. But I loved dancing, and it was fun. And I thought, hey, maybe it's time to start dating. And I remember, like, the requirements that I had for a boyfriend, it was like that they needed to be a good dancer, and they could. Like, that's one of the most important ones. And the other one is like they did not do drugs or alcohol, or just that they didn't drink too much. It was okay if they drink, just not, I didn't want to see them drunk, I guess. So the first boy I dated was a security guard. The second one was a police officer. And the third guy was in the Army. And all of the things that I love about them is that they all had jobs where they had to be randomly drug tested. That was like, yes, someone has taken my job, kind of thing. And I didn't have to worry about them doing drugs, so it was good. And so when my fourth boyfriend showed up, because those relationships didn't work, I don't think that they had any base. Being a good dancer, not drinking is not the most important things, I think, sometimes. But when I met my fourth boyfriend, he was my sweet, really white, non-dancing, do not drink any alcohol, I thought. So I had to marry him, because in Al-Anon you learn about insanity and doing the same things over and over again, right? So I was trying to do something different, and I thought, he doesn't even go clubbing, so this could be a good thing. So, and he was a little bit of a risk, to be honest. I was taking a risk on him just because he was going to school in finances, and that job does not require any drug testing. So I was like, oh, maybe I have to do it somewhere, get it done somewhere. But he grew up here, and I moved from sunny, warm, beautiful beaches, sunshine state, to the greatest snow on earth, and I still complain about it sometimes. So our first 2 years of marriage was really good, and we were just getting to know each other, and things were good. And he worked mornings, I worked nights. So we were just really busy trying to get through life, But our third year of marriage got pretty interesting. And to give you a few examples, his family loves to get together, like for Sunday dinners. And we would go to Sunday dinners, and my sweetheart would start saying crazy things. And after a while, he would start drooling and kind of falling asleep. And when you're learning English, you try to learn people's facial expressions. And I remember people would be like, what the heck? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh no, there's something happening. But, like I just try to read the expressions, because people most of the time, some people still don't understand my accent, and I'm sorry if you don't. But I remember by the end of the meal, his family will come over, and he asked me, it's like, what's going on? Is something wrong happening? And I'll be like, no, what are you talking about? Like, my sweet husband worked all night last night. He had so much work, and he's just so tired, and, he's so good, and we just need to let him sleep. That's all he needs, And I was such a good liar. I always pride myself on honesty, but at that time, I was in such a mess that I became a pretty good liar of keeping the appearances kind of thing. When another experience was that we were driving from one of those family dinners, because honestly, we didn't hang out together. He had his space, I had my space, and we had little kids, so I always was with the kids. So we really didn't spend a lot of time together, and Sundays was pretty much the only time we would spend time together. And one time we were coming from his parents' home, and he was driving, and he was like in and out the lines, good thing Sunday in Provo, there's no traffic. So he was just like going all over and like really falling asleep. And I remember just holding the steering wheel, we're gonna be fine, and holding the steering wheel. And I thought, he's like, now thinking about it, I'm like, what an idiot. He was still like having the accelerator, the brake, like what were you thinking by holding the steering wheel? Like you were gonna save us, like for an accident? But like it's just like I started to become more suspicious that something was wrong. And my husband had this office, and the kids and I, we were not allowed to go into the office because he had very, very important papers. And if I went there, my kids went there, like we will mess up those papers, So, but, curiosity got the best of me. So one day he was out of the house, and I went in, and I'm like, I was hoping not to find anything, to be honest. I was hoping there was just papers in that office, but it was pretty dirty, believe me, and it wasn't good. And I remember started finding alcohol bottles behind a closet and behind his room, and I remember how I was like in shock. Like I could not believe my husband could do something like that or could have this thing hidden. So I poured everything down the drain like a good Alanon does. And I put all the bottles on display. Like I threw everything away, I put them in the kitchen, and they were displayed there a whole day waiting for him to come home, And I was like ready for a fight. I'm like, he needs to give me an explanation of what's going on. And he gets there, and he's really calm. And if you know him, he's really calm. And he was just like, oh, I'm sorry. I have a hard time sleeping, and sometimes alcohol helps me to go to sleep. I work really hard, and I have to be in the computer all the time, and it's hard to fill out those paperwork. And he promised me that he was not going to drink, that that it will stop, and I believe him. But things continue to get worse, and I decided to continue my investigating. So I went through all his electronic stuff, and he had an iPad, which in Al-Anon you learn a lot of tricks how to control your alcoholic, because it's just all stories. But one of the things I did is you know how Apple is all connected through everything, and he had this iPad, and for some reason I never felt before that I had to worry or go through his stuff. But that day I was like, I'm gonna go through all his emails and text messages, and I was looking through his text messages, and I found out that he was buying drugs, and a lot of this stuff, it had some freaky weird names. I had no idea that drugs have weird names. Why they don't put like more simple names? I don't know. But it was just like, I know this sounds weird, so it must be something bad kind of thing. And so I confronted him, and he said, he had a really good excuse for that. He said, the alcohol helps me to go to sleep, and the drugs help me to concentrate in my work. And he says, lots of successful people does this. Like, so, like he was so convincing at the time. And I, to be honest, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that he just was trying his best to be, a good person. And, but I remember, like, I kind of stayed strong about it, and I told him that he needed to stop, even though it was good for him. And he promised that he was gonna work really hard on stopping using the drugs and the drinking. And when I asked him if we should ask for help for this, he said that he could do it all on his own, like he didn't need help. And I really believe him, and it was just because when I was 11, before my parents separated, my dad got sober. He started going to AA, so I was kind of familiar with it, and he got sober. And my dad has been sober almost 25 years now. Like, it's been really good for him. But anyways, a few weeks later, I continued to notice, more and more things, and I kept doing investigations and sneaking into his office, and I'll continue to find more evidence, and that he wasn't stopping, and it gave me more, and he will continue to give me more and more explanation. And during this whole time, I continued to act like nothing was happening. My kids always looked good, they looked clean. My house was always in order. You came to my house, you thought, perfect family, everything looks perfect. And I made sure that, like, my husband would get up from his beauty sleep and make sure he ate something, because he was losing a lot of weight. He was so skinny, and I was just like, he needs to eat, because as a wife, my responsibility is to feed him, kind of thing. And I made sure I woke him up from his naps. But finally, one day, he got into a car accident, and he got arrested, and he got a DUI, and I knew we couldn't do it anymore. Like, I knew there was nothing for me to do or how to help. And so we decided to come clean to his family, and we had, those, like, on TV, those interventions, and, like, they put him in a room, and all the families there. We did the same thing. Now I look at the shows, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was that person with, like, the little piece of paper telling them, this is why we want you to change. And and so, but we mentioned that we wanted him to go to rehab, and I remember telling him that if he would not change, that I was moving back to Florida, that he was never going to see me again, that for sure he was never going to see the kids again. And I think I had a little bit of confidence on that, just because my mom moved to another country. So if she could do it, I could totally do it. Like, he would never see his kids kind of thing. But to be honest, those words, I really don't think it made any sense. I think it was just that he hit his bottom on, and it was just his time. So he did go to rehab. But, some people say that they feel good when they leave their alcoholics in rehab or in jail, because at least they know they're safe there, and there's always watching them, they're feeding them. And for me, I remember when we drove and we dropped him off at the rehab, I felt despair, I was hopeless, and I felt really defeated. And my husband had made so many promises, and he never changed. And I remember I would set, like, rules and give him ultimatums. And he was never able to go through them. And that really made me angry. And I remember feeling pretty ashamed, just because all the men in my life were a complete mess, or they've been a mess. And I was remember thinking or wondering that maybe it was my fault. I did it because all those people, the common denominator was me. And I felt really, really guilty. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit of how I ended up in Alanon. And my husband was sober, and he was doing better, after going to rehab. And someone in AA, which I'm really grateful, have helped him get a job. And now I had to start trusting him, I guess, because he was sober. And, before rehab, I turned off his phone, we sold his car, I got rid of everything, like everything that belonged to him. I remember he had like a stupid little Ottoman that he loved. Oh, I hated that thing just because it was his, and I sold it online. I got $20 out of it. And, it was funny because, I was like, if he needs a phone, it needs to be in my phone plan. So I keep track of his phone calls and everything too. And so we got him a phone, and he told me how important it is for him to have a phone, because he says when you go to AA, you need to call a sponsor every day. And it sounded like, to me, it sounded so stupid that he had to call somebody every day. And I was like, why you need to call some random loser like you to help you every day to stay sober? And, I was like, I was always available there for him to help him, to hear his stuff, But we agree, and we got him a phone, and I make sure I downloaded a tracking app because I needed to know where he was all the time. But I remember I still did not allow him to have a car. And the reason really was because we were so broke. We could not afford a car to get him a car. But at the time, I remember it was like, because I decided that he couldn't have a car. And but finally, it was getting really hard to drive him back and forth kind of thing. And so we decided that he should get it. Because of the DUI, he lost his license, and finally he was able to get it back. But one of the rules was that he needed to get a breathalyzer. So I was like, put it in my car, And every time I had to go somewhere, I had to blow in that damn thing too. It was freaking hard. One time I got stopped in the road because I couldn't get it going, and the freaking thing stopped on me, and I hated that thing. I hate the people who has to have those stuff. I know your pain, but that's the price I had to pay to control him. So another thing about control is that every time he would come home from meetings, I would smell him. It's okay, that sounds weird, I know, but he's not a coffee drinker, but I would know when he came home from meetings and he smelled like coffee, I knew he was in a meeting, and he would go to a noon meeting. There was an Italian restaurant, and he would smell like Italian food. And I remember every time he came home, I was like a dog sniffing him, like all the time. It was so crazy. I look back and I'm like, freak, I was so insane. But he continued to go to meetings, and he started to really look healthy. He gained weight. He started acting really good. And something that bothered me was like his family. His family acted like he discovered cancer. Like, oh, so good. Aren't you so proud of him that he's sober? And they will ask me, oh, that is something I would never ask somebody, because it used to make me so angry. It was like, aren't you so happy he's doing so much better? And I would be like, yes, I am. I am so happy. And deep dive inside of me, I was like, I wish I would be a widow right now. I wish he was dead and people would feel sorry for me, because, when you're a widow, people feel sorry for you and they're like, oh, for you, But it's like, where is like the glamorous thought of like, oh yeah, I'm married to an alcoholic? What is so glamorous about that? And, but anyways, in his second year, like, in sobriety, I still resented him. I hated his guts, for everything that happened. It's just like, I thought thanks to him, we lost our home, we lost our car. I sold most of our furniture online. Like, KSL was my best friend, and 2 years after all that stuff happening, we still had nothing. We still had nothing to show for, like not a home, not a, stuff. We just still have our own raggedy clothes. The only people that got new clothes were my kids because they continue to grow no matter what, And it drove me crazy. And I still kind of wanted out of the relationship, and I just didn't know how. And I would tell myself, I had like these 4 rules. If he relapses, I'm out. If he hits me, I'm out. If he mentally abused me, I'm out of here. If he hurts my kids, even if like it's a paper cut, I'm out of here. Like, I had all these rules, and I was like, as soon as he breaks one of this, like, I'm out of here. And I always was looking for something to happen. I think I was always in alert, like always looking how he treated the kids, how did he behave, and I was like, when is he gonna say something mean to me, kind of thing. And I remember like from him coming from meetings, and he will come home all happy, and this is all that I learned in AA, and I will agree and play along to whatever he had to say, but my face was telling me, like, all the time I was telling him with my face, please drop dead. Like, that was the only thing I wanted from him, to be honest. And I will pick fights with him, with hopes. I think I had hopes that he will act up, and this sounds sick to think that I wanted him to fail, but at the time I just didn't see another way out, and I was really, really miserable. And I would complain every time he went to the stupid meetings, and I always was like, why he needs so many meetings? He was going to like 4 or 5 meetings a week, and I resented him for that. I was like, you should be spending time with me and the kids and doing family stuff instead of going to those meetings, And I'm like, what kind of wisdom they have? I'm your wife. I have all the wisdom in the world, And after a while, he mentioned that there's a program for families of alcoholics, and I was quite offended by it because I was just like, you the idiot, you made the decision to drink. You're the ones who use drugs. You need help. I don't. I'm good. But it was summer 2018, and I remember like he continued to bug me about it. So I went to 2 meetings, to 2 noon meetings, 2 Al-Anon meetings, and I remember like the people there was just crying and dumping their dirty laundry out there for everybody to hear. And my impressions were like, you people are crazy. What a mess. You all really need help. I'm not like none of you. I never cry in public, hello. And I would never go back to these crazy meetings. But late in July of 2018, my husband and I, we were going in a walk, and we were talking of, we were going to celebrate our 5-year wedding anniversary. And I told my husband how I felt like I've been married to him like 100 years because of everything we have gone through. It felt like forever. And his response was like, oh, really? You feel that way? It's like, I feel like we only been married for like a year because I was loaded for the past years. And he starts laughing so freaking hard. And if you know him, you know he doesn't laugh that way. You know it's like he was saying something messed up. And I was just like, I'm gonna murder him. But I remember I just smiled at him, and I was like imagining him that I had a knife in my hand, and I was just sticking it up his neck, and I was just twisting it, and like he was bleeding in front of me. I think I watched too many horror movies. That's why I'm really visual about it. And after that, I'm like, just like imagines in this moment, and he goes like, oh, you should try another Al-Anon meeting, it could be good for you. He's like, in my group, they say like, try 6 meetings or something like that, like try out different meetings. So I'm just like, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna go to those freaking meetings, and I'm gonna show you that I don't need them. Like, I'm not the problem, you are. And I went to a night meeting on a Wednesday, and those people were saying everything that I've been saying in my head that I was not able to say out loud ever. And I felt so at home. It felt so good going to that meeting. So I liked it, and there was a store that week. I was in a store that there was a little notebook that had the Serenity Prayer in it. And I remember right after the meeting, I went and got the little notebook because I have attended a few AA meetings, and they all say that Serenity Prayer, which I thought it was so weird. Like, you all say it every time. And that workbook was going to be like my cheat sheet so I could remember that Serenity Prayer. And the other thing is, like, I wanted to take notes to make sure I tell him, and I come back, tell him, I'm not crazy. See, like, I don't need help. And so I decided to go to a noon meeting, and I shared in a very destructive way how I was thinking about killing my husband, and everybody would just started laughing. And I remember, like, you think this is funny? I have way worse thoughts than this, but sure, let's go on. But after the meeting, several ladies who came, and they started giving me hugs, and they share. One of the ladies came over, and she said that her dad was in AA, and her mom was in an Al-Anon, and she says that her dad always said that after him and his wife joined Al-Anon, and they both worked the program, that their relationship got better. And those two, they died together, of old age together. And that gave me so much hope because, remember, I'm always prepared. So I was thinking, I need to die with this man, even though it's awful. But it gave me a view, and it gave me hope. And so I continued to attend meetings. And I felt good every time I went, and I was able to share. And after I shared, no one would come and judge me or tell me what I needed to do, which I'm grateful for that Al-Anon were more gentle. And I remember that I started hearing about the 12 steps, and I know Al-Anon has tons of workbooks, and someone showed me, the workbooks, and I was like, I could do this by myself. I'm taking online classes. I could totally do this by myself. And, after each step, like in Al-Anon, after each step, there's questions, and I will answer the questions, and I thought, me, myself, and I, we're an awesome team. We could do this, but there was this woman that she was like, I always thought that she was so aggressive and mean, but she shared how it was important to work the steps and to work them with a sponsor. I was so offended. I felt like it was like a personal attack towards me because I was getting better. Hello, like I didn't need a sponsor. And, and then she said, hey, get someone that you like, that they have what they like, what, I don't know how you say it anyways. But I continued to go, and I found a sponsor, and I remember looking around the room and thinking, these women can be my mom or my grandma. Like, I don't know if I really want this kind of thing. My mom is pretty bossy, so I thought I was going to get that, a pretty bossy lady. But, the wonderful thing is, like, my sponsor is so calm, and I feel like she can see the world ending, and she would not care. She was just like, I'm ready for my meeting. I'm ready to go. I love that about her. So I asked her to be my sponsor, and I remember we met at the Provo library in one of the study rooms, and we got a workbook, and she gave me her phone number. So when the first time we met, I remember she asked me for my full name, my birthday, my address. And I was like, oh my gosh, you need a full background check to be in these meetings, But we went through the whole thing, and I remember, like, I was just ranting to her and telling her how I felt and how my husband ruined my life and how things were horrible, and by the end, she just said the magical words for me. She was just like, well, our time is up. And she said, next week, I may not remember everything you said. And I was just like, what? She's not going to remember? So that means she's not going to go out there and tell her family what I said, that I'm crazy, Like, it gave me so much freedom, that she's able to that she wasn't able to remember. To what I know, she's been my sponsor 4 years, and she remembers people. She does remember things I say. And she knows, like, my darkest thoughts, and she was the very, very first person that I think I learned to trust. And to give you a little summary of the steps, I remember, like, I hated step 1, like, accepting I was powerless. No, like, hello, that's why there are rules and regulations, right? You follow them, and that's a way of control, and that really made me mad. And I know in step 2, I remember, like, I remember, like, growing up and thinking of God, but I don't think I rely on him just because he works really slow, and I need answers right away, So I had to learn patience, and I remember how my sponsor mentioned to make a list of qualities of things I wanted in a higher power. And I remember, like, my first thought was, like, he can have blue eyes. He's in his early 40s, and he must be blonde, and no beard, no facial hair, I think I was looking for a husband, not a higher power. And, but I put those thoughts aside, and we started writing the real stuff, and now my higher power is kind. He never abandons me, and he's patient, and he doesn't control me, and I really love that. And I have really learned to trust my higher power now. And step 4 was brutal. It was awful. It took me months to work on it. And I don't think I ever cried as much as when I worked step 4, just because step 4 helped me realize my part in the dysfunction of my family, and how, I play a role into the negativity behavior in my home, and I really didn't like that. It was pretty sad. But step 5, 6, and 7, I remember character defects. Hello, like, I only have good characters. I'm an honest, good citizen, and I remember, like, I realized that nothing was special about me. There's nothing about my story that makes me special. And the miracle in those steps, it was that I stopped bitching and complaining about my life was so hard, how I was so unique. I grew up in a third world country. I was poor, It was like all the stuff was, like, going away, and I was more grateful. And step 8 and 9, I started doing, going back a little bit, when I was doing investigations on my husband, I discovered a few text messages from a person they were both getting drugs from each other. And that person came to my house and ate dinner with us and held my kids and told me, what I wanted to hear. And I really felt like he broke my trust, and I felt like he was the bad person. He was the manipulator. He was the one who got my sweet husband to do drugs, It's like he ruined our lives, And for years, I blamed him. I hated him, to be honest. And after coming to the meetings, I realized that it wasn't his fault, that he was just affected by alcoholism. And the only way that he got out of alcoholism is through death. He never got sober. And I remember talking to my sponsor about it, just because when we were making our list of people to make amends, I put him in the list number 1. He was my number 1 person, just because he was dead. When you make amends, you hope people doesn't, bitch back at you about it, So I was like, that would be easy. He can't talk back. Like, that would be awesome. So we found out where he was buried, and we took flowers, and it was so wonderful to be there. And I remember how I had the most spiritual uplifting moment that I have ever experienced before. And it really gave me faith of the program. And it made me realize how getting a sponsor was the best decision, coming to Al-Anon. And I knew the program worked because I was just getting lighter and lighter. And all the baggage that I've been holding on from childhood was all being taken away. And I was just so grateful for that. And step 10, taking that daily inventory, I love it because it stops me from saying stupid things. It also, like, I get to say sorry right away. Step 11, meditation is something that I struggle. And I feel like the only time I feel like completely at peace is when I come to this room, except for today. I'm really stressed out right now. But other than that, like when I go to those meetings, when I just start walking to those rooms, I just feel so much better. I feel lighter. I know there's hope when I come to those meetings. And step 12, carry the message, to others. I remember I heard a speaker that said, "Oh, step 12, there's nothing more dangerous than a new Alanon. Their brain are constantly exploding with ideas, and they go and they're crazy recruiters out there, and I was part of those recruiters. I was like, you need Alanon, and I was trying to tell my family all to come to Alanon, But I realized that the part that I love the most about step 12 is like the practicing the principles in all affairs. I love that I'm able to be honest, and I'm able to be honest with you, and I'm able to be honest with myself. I can really be the authentic me. I don't have to act like I have it together. I don't have to act happy anymore, and sometimes I even acted angry, okay? I even control that, kind of crazy, and I love that steps that I can be honest with myself. And one of the Al-Anon workbooks, it says, my defects of characters are good traits that have taken to extreme. And I remember, if you remember from my life lessons, you never ask for help, you don't trust people, you always prepare, you always save money, right? Well, today I'm constantly asking for help. I realized today that I don't need to know everything. Something funny about that. I used to love National Geographic, that channel. And because I was like, I need to know everything. And I love the channel. And the first time, one time I came over and I said something, my sister was like, oh, there's National Geographic telling me what I needed to do. And I stopped doing that, but I was so offended. But it's true, like, I don't have to know everything anymore. And that doesn't mean that because I don't know something, it doesn't mean I have not worked hard enough. I think I worked enough. I just, but it's good that I love that I have more room to learn. I love that I'm more open to that. Trusting people was hard for me, especially trusting alcoholics. I'll take a drink for this because this would make me cry. They have Kleenex. I didn't know there were Kleenex here. A lot of AA meetings don't have Kleenex. But I had trouble trusting alcoholics because my dad got sober, and I remember going to AA with him, and my mom would cook food for the meeting. Don't expect that from me. I'm a terrible cook. But after he got sober and he kind of was getting better, he found another family and he left us for the other family. So I know people can be sober, but I still felt like I couldn't trust him. And last year, I learned some big lessons about trust and control. I always wanted to look like my life was put together kind of thing. And I always been really proud that even though through all the craziness in my life, I always been good about going to the doctor, going to my dentist appointments, taking my kids to the doctor. And last year I was in a situation where I had no control over my body. And I was bleeding internally, and it was pretty fast, and I didn't know it at the time. I just knew I had a lot of pain. But people, doctors, and hospitals in America are really expensive. So I was like, I'm not going to the hospital until, like, it really needs to happen. And I remember I was praying to my higher power to tell me, hey, let me know when it's time to go to the hospital, or this Tylenol is gonna work, and I don't have to go anywhere. And I remember feeling an answer and said, it's time to go. And, so I immediately told my husband, it's time to go, we need to go to the hospital. And in my way, I was in pain, but I was completely, like, my thoughts were still racing, and I was still thinking about my kids and who was going to stay with them while we went to the hospital. And, my sweetheart said, oh, we should call this person, and that person is in AA, and he's a sober alcoholic. And, my initial thoughts a few years ago, it would have been like, what an awful idea. We cannot trust an alcoholic. But, that day after he said who we were calling, I just felt so much peace. I love that alcoholic, and I love his family. And I knew my kids were going to be safe with him. And my third lesson was that I never thought I could really trust my alcoholic husband. And definitely I could not trust him with my life, I always thought, because of all that we have gone through, I always thought that he was going to be the one laying in a hospital bed. And I thought I would be like the one making decisions, like, okay, plug him, unplug him, kind of thing. Like, I really thought that. And that day, I was the one in the hospital bed, and I had no control over anything that was happening to me or what they were doing to me. And I was in so much peace that I didn't care what the decisions my husband was making. I knew that I could trust him with whatever decisions he needed to make that day. And I knew that my kids were safe, and I trusted my higher power that no matter what happened that day, that things were going to be fine. And I love this program so much. Nowhere in the program says that if you come to meetings and work the steps that my life was going to be perfect and that all my relationship will be good. But at the closing of every meeting, we read these statements, and it says, a few special words of those of you who haven't been with us long. Whatever your problems, there's those among us who have them too. If you try to keep an open mind, you will find help. You will come to realize that there's no situation too difficult to be better, and no unhappiness to be too great to be lessened. And it also doesn't mean that because I come to Al-Anon, I don't have crazy moments. I still have crazy moments. And my relapse are not as obvious as the ones in AA. For example, I'll give you a quick one. I was looking for tape. I was taping some presents. And I was looking for tape all over the house, and I couldn't find it. And my husband, now he works from home, and he does work in computer stuff. And he has his own office, which now I am allowed to enter as many times as I want. But that day, I couldn't find tape. Okay, the man doesn't use paper. He does everything online, but I thought he could have tape. So I went, opened a few drawers, couldn't find the tape. And after a while, I started going through all of his stuff. I was lifting everything, open drawers, checking under the seat, looking behind the computer. I was going through everything, through all of his stuff, that by the time I ripped the room apart, I had no idea what I was there for. I had no idea I was looking for tape. And so, I talked to my sponsor about my little relapse, and she said that I should make some amends, and that I should talk to him about it. And I don't know if I didn't do it because I wasn't trusting him. I think it's just it's like a weird thing always in the back of your mind kind of thing. And I told my husband, I was like, my sponsor says I need to make amends to you. And he's like, what? And he was thinking something like serious, like I blew money or something, And I was like, I was looking for tape, and I told him all the whole thing, right? And he just starts laughing. He's like, "Oh, I don't care. You can go through all of my stuff, And I was like, "Oh, thank you. You don't hate me, But he was just like, he's like, "Oh, well," he's like, "back, when early in sobriety," and I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "You were so negative." Like, he was just like, I would come from my meetings all happy, like all like bright and like happy and stuff. And you will suck the life out of everything. You were just so negative. And he says that he talked to his sponsor about me and dealing with me, and that he says, "She's so negative. I want to divorce her. I don't want to be with her." And that his sponsor was just like, let me look for it so I can like rephrase it. How he said, he says, "Shut up and do whatever she tells you to do." And to be honest, now I think like that really saves our relationship, because he was like my little puppy at the time. He did everything I wanted him to do, and because he did everything I wanted, I had no excuse to fight with him, and I realized, how I used to have a prisoner. I didn't have a husband at that time. And now that we both work the steps, I have a partner that we can go through things and we can have different conversations, and I'm really grateful for that. And to close, I kind of want to say how grateful I am for the meetings and for the people that makes it happen, for the people that shows up to meetings, because without those people, I would not have the peace and happiness that I have today. And all the stupid little slogan that we have, keep it simple, all those things that like remind you, like the serenity prayer. Every time I'm upset and I'm like, "God, grant me the serenity," and I'm like crying to my teeth, but all those stuff is so helpful, and I'm just so grateful. And I in a few of the meetings, people will say, "I am so grateful I married an alcoholic," and I'll be like, "Yeah, shut up. You are not grateful," And now I am one of those annoying people that I'm like, I am so grateful I married an alcoholic that brought me to Al-Anon, and I'm grateful for like those annoying people that are all positive, because I am becoming one of those, and it's helping me a lot. So thanks for letting me share.